So while the tragedy was playing out, though, the media and others were quick to jump on the shooting to push a certain narrative. The Wall Street Journal says it simply is not that simple. Its editorial board wrote this: partisans are already using the massacre to leap to broader political conclusions, as they always do. There's no doubt that a racist subculture exists in America and is spread on social media. Politicians and media figures have an obligation to condemn it and such conspiratorial notions as white replacement theory. But mass shooters have had many motivations in recent years, and mental illness seems to be the most significant common denominator to the extent there is one. Will Cain on the Mez in Focus today, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Good to see you. You and I both have read this Washington Post article entitled "Hate is Not at the Root of Most Mass Shootings." Your thoughts?
Pretty fascinating there from the Washington Post. What it suggests is there are deeper personal issues. In other words, not something that you can use to indict society, and certainly not a political party or a partisan point to make, but rather you need to look at the individuals and what might be troubling the sick individual that heads down this path. And that intuitively makes sense. You know, there are clearly people, Harris, who are going to use this moment to try to indict their political opponents and use this moment to say, well, this is a result of certain rhetoric that might be in our political sphere.
They were already doing it this weekend.
They're already doing it, and they do it after every national tragedy. And to some extent, both sides are guilty of doing just that. But if we really want to try to solve the problem, then you do this. You look into the individual. You look into, yes, some things that can contribute. He was racist. He made that clear. He used 180 pages or more to lay out that he did believe in this idea of white separatism or white supremacy. He also said he got bored during the lockdowns and in 2020 spent time falling down the internet rabbit hole. There's a lot of stuff we can peel the onion layers back on there and say, what are we doing? What are we failing? What did we miss? Where were the red flags? Where you end up with this tragic situation in Buffalo.
Yeah, you know, what struck me, too, about this article, our research shows that mass shooters walk a common route to violence through early childhood trauma. If they fail to achieve what they've been socialized to believe is their destiny, material wealth, power, success, happiness, they reach an existential crisis point. I don't see race necessarily mentioned there. And the reason I bring that up is this case has to be adjudicated. And the more narrative and pontification that people put out there, the farther it seems that we get away from really understanding what we're looking at. And it is a tragedy no matter how you look at it.
No doubt. And I don't think you nor the Washington Post in this editorial are saying that race didn't play a role.
No.
This individual made it clear race played a role. But if we're trying to solve this problem in the aggregate, in the long term, to make sure it doesn't happen again, then we need to be asking other questions than the one that we're simply having as a nation at all times about reconciling our issues over race. It's about something much more as well.
You and I are saying something similar in terms of don't indict, you know, certain segments of the population based on what one person is doing. And I would say that about mental illness as well. Mental illness is not a reason or a trigger or a motive, if you will, for why people do it. It may be an underlying. There are plenty of people with mental illness who don't do this. So you've got to really look at, well, how do we get to a kid who said he wanted to threaten his high school and kill people there first?
It's tough.
How do you get there? Do you do it through counseling at school? You know you have a problem. And that was before, apparently, he had gone down the rabbit hole of finding radicalism or whatever it was that he found.
I think we try to do two things at the same time. We try to correct the problem by looking to analyze and place blame somewhere, and we also try to take out our previously held grudges on others.
That helps no one.
Cycles.
It doesn't. Democrats on social media were quick to capitalize on the shooting as a means to push for gun control legislation. Congressman Adam Schiff tweeted this: angry that the GOP continues to block even the most basic gun safety measures. We can stop this. Republicans just refuse to. Cowards. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal also weighed in, writing, mass shootings are an epidemic in this country. We must end it now. And Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley said, white supremacy and gun violence are grave threats. It is so far beyond time for Congress to act and save lives. So you've got a couple of members of the squad there.
Yeah, and Ayanna Pressley's lays out both of the attempts to make this about something bigger, and they just happen to be the things that she is constantly opposed to, white supremacy and now guns as well. The Democratic Party has shown an increasing trend to say no matter what the crisis may be, it's an excellent opportunity to advance our agenda. No matter. Inflation, oh, you know, we heard this from a Congresswoman, Katie Porter. Well, that is further evidence that we need to allow for abortion because people should be able to control how many mouths they feed. She literally made that argument last week.
Secretary Yellen even said that women, particularly black women who have babies and don't get, can't raise them and don't get abortions, are part of why the economy isn't working. I mean, I'm paraphrasing her somewhat, but it got such a reaction from Senator Tim Scott.
Joe Biden tweeted out that in order to control inflation, we should look at the corporate tax rate, something that brought him Jeff Bezos's ridicule.
Man.
The point is, here's a crisis, here's a problem, let's push our agenda. We now have another terrible crisis here in Buffalo, and what is the response from many of these politicians? Push the agenda which already existed.
All right, let me get to this. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says conservative Supreme Court justices, quote, slapped women in the face with the leaked Roe versus Wade draft ruling. The speaker also responded to criticism that Democrats should have been more prepared for such a ruling, given the court's makeup. She took it as an opportunity to go after former President Trump.
Who would have ever suspected that a creature like Donald Trump would become president of the United States, waiving a list of judges that he would appoint, therefore getting the support of the far right, and appointing those anti-freedom justices to the court?
Bill Maher condemns protests outside of U.S. Supreme Court justices' homes. Well, that's good because it's a federal offense. Watch.
She said, I don't have an official U.S. government position on where people protest, but we do.
Yeah, I think we do.
It's wrong. It's intimidation. It's against the law. I mean, look, it's not terribly violent, obviously, but would you want this outside your house?
18 U.S. Code 1503. I have read it live on the program many times.
Here's the connection, I think, between Nancy Pelosi and Bill Maher. There is not an institution in the United States of America that has been safe from an attack from the left if their chosen agenda or their chosen goal or chosen outcome is not accomplished. This leaker and now the protest outside the Supreme Court justices' homes are the product of not getting the outcome that they want, which is Roe v. Wade being upheld. By the way, Roe v. Wade has been criticized not just by potential justices that Donald Trump might appoint, but from the left as well. It's been bad law since the 1970s. It's not even the law of the land, and almost everybody, including law professors from the left, have said this is just really, really bad law.
Well, and Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee has said this doesn't wipe away a woman's choice to go get an abortion, but it leaves it to the hands of the states.
Right.
And that's actually true.
Nancy Pelosi said this was anti-freedom.
read the document. That may be why when Obama was in office and he had bicameral majorities, they didn't do anything to codify the law. Maybe they didn't have the kind of support. I've been asking that question for a couple of weeks.
And they don't now. What they're pushing through in the Senate, which is more radical than Roe v. Wade. Isn't it fascinating that every Democratic politician who's asked, Eric Adams, Jared Polis, governor of Colorado, Tim Ryan, would-be senator from Ohio, their answer is it's a woman's choice. Even when pressed, what about the day of birth? What about the day before birth? It's a woman's choice. They're adopting a position more radical than Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. I wondered then if Mayor Adams was even listening to the question as he walked through that melee and was so cavalier about answering it. It was interesting. It was really interesting to say, oh, yeah, right up until, which puts him diametrically opposed to anybody who might see it otherwise.
It puts him in league with North Korea and China. These are the countries that allow abortions up to that point. The United States is more progressive and more liberal on abortion than is France and the vast majority of Europe, who set their limits at 12 weeks.
Will Cain, in focus on the Mez. Good to see you in person.
Good to see you.